Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. I hope everyone's enjoying their holiday break. We are here. It is just ahead of the Christmas holiday, I guess. So we hope that whatever you're celebrating, it's going fantastic. And we thought here we would go into 2 episodes. This week and next week will be sort of around goal setting and also mental toughness, which is struck me as an odd thing, but you've explained it to me that you also have an article that's going to come out to go with this little mini series we're putting together.
Yes, we'll include a link to this in the show notes, but for Runner's World, I was doing an article, basically kind of a personal essay with a bunch of expert slant to it, where I was talking about the concept of mental toughness and basically how I was kind of having this weird moment of maybe I'm actually not that mentally tough.
That's right. And I said, Molly, you do 100-mile runs and annihilate your feet, and I have seen you vomit and then sprint immediately after vomiting.
And then the weird response to that, though, and the one that I stand by is, for me, that comes fairly easily. I actually don't think it's that tough. If you ask me, would I rather do that again, or would I rather try to run a hard 5K? My answer is going to always be that I'd rather run 100 miles.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you used that was sort of like, you said this was a personal essay. So this article that will come out, is it coming out soon? When is it?
It's actually out already.
Okay,
so I'll
great.
include, like I say, a link to it in the show notes. And actually on that note, I will note it's behind a paywall for anyone that's subscribed to either Runner's World or Bicycling. You can get access to the article. I highly recommend supporting the journalists and magazines and stuff that you actually like reading. So whether you're gifting it to yourself or someone else in your life, those are
good gift idea if you're sort of down to the wire here, I guess, when this episode's coming out. But also you will get a good, feel for the article and the concepts with these 2 upcoming episodes. So this one and then this one just ahead of the new year that's coming out next week.
Yeah. So in this one, we are talking to repeat guest Dr. Erin Aylala of Scotty Sports Psychology, and we loved having her on. It was one of our more popular episodes. Actually, so is next week's guest. And I thought it would be really cool to get her take on this mental toughness concept, and also just some goal setting, cues and things to think about as you're heading into the new year. And 'tis the season to set some resolutions. So this is just kind of a really fun episode, getting into a bunch of my own personal questions. And I think she has some pretty interesting takes on what mental toughness is really. And I think the irony of mental toughness is that when you think of it, you think of the David Goggins kick the crap out of yourself and then kick it harder. Vomit to sprint. Okay. But the reality is true mental toughness doesn't actually look like that.
Mm-hmm. It's more, is it the day-to-day, or what do you mean?
Well, it's a day-to-day, but it's also the bounce back, the ability to have self-compassion and have a hard moment and come back from it. And the negative, just harden up, toughen up, call yourself names kind of thing, just doesn't work in the long run.
Right. So coming back from vomiting with a sprint is not mental toughness.
Okay, fine.
You might have a little bit. But you could improve is what you're hoping.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So part of the reason for writing this, again, a bit more context, is this summer I did these 2 events, the 100-miler and then the 50-mile FKT. And in both of them, I missed the record by 3 minutes.
Okay.
So that's 0.01% off. That is all I needed to do.
And twice.
Right. So it started occurring to me, I'm like, well, I feel like I'm doing all the training, doing all this stuff right. Is it just that is there a mental component that I'm missing? Mm-hmm. And I did end up with some mental performance homework to work on.
Okay.
So
interesting.
We shall see. We shall see.
All right. And then a little bit of goal setting will come as well here.
Exactly.
Yes. So it's the season for that. So I hope your goal setting is going well. Is there anything else we need to know before we get into this?
Nope, I think that is it. Before we get into it, though, quick word from our sponsors over at Payable. So if you are in any kind of situation this coming holiday break where you're trying to sell some stuff and you need to figure out a way to do that online, Payable lets you take payments in a Google form. I know this time of year, a lot of donation type things. So if you're trying to collect money for, say, an animal shelter or something, or you are the animal shelter trying to set up a donation platform, this is just a super easy way to make it so people can pay you through a Google form, so you don't need to start a whole new website. And you can find all of our favorite templates and use cases over at payableapps.com/athlete.
That's right. And we have a new landing page there with Payable, so you can see our picture there just to make sure you know that you're in the right spot.
Perfect. All right, with that, let's get into this episode with Dr. Erin Aylala. Enjoy. Erin, welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm so excited to have you back on.
Thank you for having me. I love being a return guest.
And you're one of my all-time favorite return guests because we always have such great conversations. I always feel like I accidentally end up having really good ones before we're like officially recording. And then I'm like, oh no, I wanted to get this in there.
Totally. I know. Yes. We're here. Yes.
So I had initially sent you my question that I'm working on an article for Runner's World on that is basically like a personal essay where I'm really just kind of like psychoanalyzing myself through the lens of, am I actually mentally tough? Because my thesis, as I pitched it to them, is like, as it turns out, I'm much less mentally tough than I thought. Just because I do these big, long endurance things, that doesn't necessarily mean that I am actually mentally tough so much as, to be totally frank, like genetically gifted and pretty good at sticking to a training plan.
Fair. Fair
is how I put it. So I just wanted to kind of give you like first hit when I sent you that email. What kind of came to mind around this concept of mental toughness?
Yeah. I think a lot of people have the idea that mental toughness is kind of taking this brute force approach to getting through things and kind of like this, right, like rise and grind, put your head down, do the work, man up. And a lot of
the David Goggins approach.
Yeah, the David Goggins approach, like there are so many, and that is one form of mental toughness. But when I think about mental toughness, like we're talking about listeners, we're talking about community members, we're talking about women who have full-time jobs and then are also training for marathons, right? Like, and have families and responsibilities. So it is not, realistic to rise and grind and get 3 hours of sleep. Like, mental toughness is not sustainable if you're taking that version of it. So mental toughness is not just pushing away thoughts and feelings and like compartmentalizing them.
Wait, I can't just tamp all this stuff down.
Right. Because like as humans, I always say like we like to avoid, just as humans, we like to avoid difficult thoughts and feelings. Mental toughness is our ability to bring them along for the ride. So we're going to have difficult thoughts and difficult feelings when we're training, especially on long training runs or rides. We're going to have difficult thoughts and feelings when our alarm goes off in the morning and we have a lift scheduled and we don't want to get out of our comfy warm bed. We're going to have difficult thoughts and feelings when we think we're going to get a certain time because Garmin says we're in shape for a sub-4 marathon, and then we're running the marathon and we are not on track, right? And so mental toughness is our ability to sit with and accept those thoughts and feelings and to continue to show up in ways that are important and meaningful to us. That's what mental toughness is in my book. I make the rules here.
I love it. I think that is a great definition. And this is going to lead to me asking the absolute wrong question. And I acknowledge that it is the wrong question. Here we go. How do we know that we're like mentally in that? Like, how do we know we're good to go? Like, how do we know we're done?
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, it's a lot of trial and error, and it's going to be different for everyone. So a really great example is like DNFing. So let's say we're, in an ultra or Frankie, any race, and we're at a point where we have to decide whether or not we're going to finish. Like what the society tells us that to be mentally tough is to push through, right? But at the same time, I would argue that you need to be really mentally tough in order to decide to quit and to call it, because society tells you that you're going to be a failure if you don't finish. So it's all about the context. So one of the things, like if I think about an example, some of my clients, I'll often meet with them like after a really big race or event, because people often neglect the come down or the post race blues. And so we'll kind of do a debrief and talk about, how did it go? How are you feeling about it? And that's what we hit on, is exactly what you asked, is like, how did we handle this? Am I proud of how I showed up? Could I have done anything differently? Not from a place of regret or perfectionism, just more of a place from curiosity. And like, was this the right thing for me to do in the moment based off of the circumstances? So, I'll give you an example. I had one athlete this year who didn't finish one of her big ultras, and she was very comfortable with her decision because it meant she was able to go to the finish line to cheer on one of her best friends and training buddies. And she got what she came for. So like that in my world is mentally tough, to call it in that moment and being like, I'm going to sit with the uncomfortable feeling of knowing I haven't finished and maybe I could have.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So I think it's, you don't know until you do the thing, and then you've got to reflect on it. And I think that's what a lot of us forget to do as athletes, because we're told to just let go of mistakes and put it behind you. But how else are we going to learn like how to be a better athlete? You know what I mean?
Ooh,
so
absolutely.
The reflection is key.
Yeah. And as someone who once had a death before DNF bumper sticker on their truck.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture.
Exactly.
Totally. Yeah.
Like coming up, like that was the thing. And, DNF, the first race I DNF'd, I felt horrible about it. And now I've had to kind of come to terms with like, oh no, that's part of being an athlete. Like
it's part of being, especially in endurance athlete, but especially in ultra endurance athlete.
Exactly.
Like, it happens, right?
Well, and a lot of times, like the smarter high performance thing to do actually is, in fact, to DNF, to live to race another day and have the faster recovery and all of that. So, like it's a weird mindset shift when you realize, like, oh, actually, DNFing is the more high performance mindset.
Yep. And one thing I like, because it's tough to know, it's tough to plan for, right? But I encourage listeners and, anyone thinking about ultras, or frankly, any endurance where there might be a chance, or if you're like nursing an injury and you don't know if it's going to flare up, is just asking yourself, like, what are the circumstances? Like, ask yourself when you're clear-headed, what are the circumstances where it would make sense for me to pull the parachute? What would I be comfortable with? Because if you're doing that ahead of time, it's going to be easier for you to make the decision when you're feeling more emotional and you're super fatigued and you're not thinking clearly. Right? So try to take an inventory beforehand.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I think the other thing that has really come up as I've been kind of investigating this idea of mental toughness, mental performance, is we often equate the best performance in the race with the person who is mentally toughest or has the best mental performance. But what I've realized in figuring this article out and playing with it is, actually, no, that person just finished the fastest. I'm going to make the argument that the person who is like 5 hours behind is significantly more mentally tough, because they have to be mentally tough for longer, strictly from like a practical standpoint.
And likely had more setbacks. Like, I would argue the person who finishes first that's one of those days where everything clicks. And we're not saying it's easy to finish first. It's really hard and you have to dig really deep. And you likely didn't have a bunch of flats or mechanicals or GI issues or equipment failures, right? And so the mentally tough people are the ones who are able to take those things in stride and kind of take that mental inventory and ask themselves, what's the next best thing for me to do right now in the moment? And then to do that thing and to keep going, if it makes sense, right? Like, that's what mental toughness is. So I agree. The people who are 5 hours behind, they've probably been doing some stuff to get there. And that takes a lot of mental toughness.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, there's like a euphoria that comes from when you're winning the race that carries you through versus, when you're finishing mid-pack, back of pack, whatever. I said this to Dr. Scott Fry when we were talking about this for similar, for this article as well. I said, like, they're so much tougher because they are entirely internally motivated. They have like the extrinsic of like, is really just finishing the race, but there's no win or something like that they're going for. It is all just get to that finish line.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, being mentally tough means being like really robust and adaptable. the folks who are the most persistent and able to kind of flex and adapt and being like, well, this isn't going according to plan. What are we going to do now? Those are the folks who have really high levels of mental toughness.
Oh, and
Is
that's
that,
such a
yeah, that
succinct way
flexibility.
of putting it. Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
and I am going to add like one other monkey wrench in this whole system is a sport, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit with the people that we're talking to, our listeners, most, a lot of the athletes that we work with here, I assume a lot of your athletes as well. We are working full-time jobs, parents, like caregivers, have all of this other stuff going on that arguably demands a lot of mental toughness from us to get through the day.
Yep.
So I guess my like really weird question that I keep coming back to is, does sport actually have to be where we're practicing mental toughness? Like, can we actually
Yeah, that's
like
such
pull
a
this
great
back and say,
question.
do we need to be
Hmm.
mentally tough in sport?
Yeah, I think if people are training for performance, then mental toughness is important. If people are training for other reasons, like mental health, stress management, things like that, totally fine. Like you make the rules. And I think back to earlier this fall, I was just in it with work. I sponsor the state mountain bike league. And so I'm traveling across the state of Minnesota every weekend to hang out with the 6th through 12th graders. It's amazing. I love this league. It also means I have 2 months without a day off because I'm still working, small business owner Monday through Friday. And so I was really tired and fatigued for good reason. And I told my coach was giving me some good like threshold interval runs. And finally I said to her, I was like, we need to pull the parachute. I can't, my nervous system is not happy with me
Yeah.
doing these. I want to run for fun and I want to run for joy. And I had plenty of time in my training plan. We weren't building up for anything. And it was the best decision I made. So in that moment, mental toughness was not a priority for me, right? I didn't have to push through because my priority was stress management. And so I knew
Yes.
that's what I needed if I'm, training for right, like Mid-South double, right? So 50K, if it was February, a month before the race, that's different, right? Because I need to get that training volume in and that training stimulus, right? So it's such a personal decision, and the context is so important. So it's kind of asking yourself, what do I want to actually get out of this? What is my why?
Oh, yes, so good. And yeah, you and I similar boats, which I feel like happens very frequently. But yeah,
Yes, totally.
I'm in the middle of like a pretty hectic like family, work, books stuff. And I actually a couple days ago messaged my coach and said like, "Hey, I'm doing what I can in these next couple weeks, but like
Yep.
it's probably there's going to be some skipped stuff, there's going to be
Yep.
some cut short stuff. Like
Hmm.
just know that like this is like I don't need accountability or like someone yelling
Right.
at me or like checking it. Like I don't even need checking in. I just
Yep.
need you to know that like we're doing what we can and I'll be
Yep.
back and it'll be fine."
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing, like for folks who want to work on mental toughness, because that's one of the questions I often get is like, well, how do I become more mentally tough? Right. Because you
Mhm.
can train for it. I mean, mindfulness meditation is incredible. And that's going to help a lot with mental toughness because you're more aware of your thoughts and feelings without judging them. So that's always my number one. Out of all the sports psych skills, the one that research consistently shows will give you the most bang for your buck is mindfulness meditation. So that helps, and we can always go down that rabbit trail. But I think it's like one thing I always say is you can't expect to be mentally tough on race day if you haven't practiced it. So it is really important to deliberately train in conditions that are going to challenge you mentally. So if you've got bad weather and there is a likelihood of having bad weather on race day and it makes sense for you to train it, then do it with proper gear, of course, like be responsible. Train when you're fatigued. Like be really intentional and think about like what are the circumstances that are going to test me on race day, and then that's what you try to train for, and we call that like stress training or pressure training, and that'll help a lot with the mental toughness. Just like intentional small steps. You can also do it with risk taking. So for example, cornering and crit races, before braking, make yourself wait just one more moment before feathering the brakes, or descents for Nordic skiing or mountain biking. Make yourself like one more push before you ease up. So those little things where you're slowly moving the needle can help a lot with the mental toughness.
Oh my God, my heart rate increased when you said crit. Like just break
Right.
a
I
little.
know. Yeah.
Wait a second. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God.
Yes. Yes.
And okay, again, I'm just like full of weird questions here.
Love
But
it.
part of what's making me come to this article is this idea that I had never thought of myself as someone who, quote unquote, needed to work on their mental performance. Like, I have interviewed you, I've interviewed dozens of sports psychs and mental performance experts and all of this stuff
Yep.
over the years. And I think in my brain, I just kind of thought that, like, by osmosis, by the power of interviewing all of you, I just had, internalized all of this information, and
Yeah.
I'm just good to go.
Right.
As it turns out, I think really it's not that I necessarily need the mental like toughness, like Goggins style, hard man, whatever.
Right.
Actually, there's just a lot of skills that I can, you know, improve upon. So part
Mm-hmm.
of it was like I was doing this fastest known time attempt and I missed it by just a
Mm-hmm.
couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of got me down a rabbit hole of like, wait, am I just not mentally tough? Like, did I just not grit it out enough in the middle? Like, surely I could have made up 2 minutes over almost 12 hours. And I think that's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I would say my self-talk during that time was atrocious. I was so mean to myself that entire
Yes.
8 hours of the 12. I was so mean to myself on that run
Yes.
because I didn't have other racers around. I didn't have any music. I had just my thoughts. And it turns out
Yes.
I'm an asshole to myself.
Right.
Holy crap. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Someone like me who just is kind of like not poo-pooing it, who totally believes in mental performance, but
Yeah.
just kind of thinks they're doing all right. What are maybe some of the signs that like some of us could actually probably work on this a little more than we are?
Oh, so good. This is actually a beautiful segue. There's a qualitative research study that came out a number of years ago, and it's called, I'll get the link for you so you can add it to the show notes. They call it the zipper effect, where you bring together mental toughness and self-compassion, and it is a very robust combination. And a lot of athletes do not like this idea of self-compassion. So because we have this idea that it's like going easy or soft, right? But when I explain there, and when you look at the actual research, there are three core ingredients to self-compassion. The first is just a sense of mindfulness, is recognizing how I'm feeling or how I'm thinking in the moment. So that would be in this case being like, wow, I am really an asshole right now. I'm being an asshole to myself. This is ridiculous, right? Maybe not the ridiculous point, because that would probably be judgment, but the mindfulness is like, wow, this talk is not helpful. The second is common humanity. So it makes sense that you're feeling that way and thinking those things because of where you are and what you're doing. And it is a very human experience, right? When you are in it. And so it's recognizing like it makes sense and I'm not the only one, I'm human, right? The third ingredient then is self-kindness. I call it self-respect, right? It's like, because the kindness piece feels a little fluffy for athletes sometimes. But if you're respecting yourself, then you're probably not going to be beating yourself up. So when you add those three ingredients to mental toughness, it's a pretty awesome combination because it allows you to basically say, wow, I'm being really hard on myself right now. Is this actually helping me? No. What can I do instead? What's the next best thing that I can do? And then it's like, keep moving forward, right? Like eat, drink, give myself a
Oh
moment.
yeah.
And it's kind of taking that inventory. But a lot of people are very comfortable with the inner critic because if we're beating ourselves up, then we beat others to the punch. And then we also, it's like, it's this weird protective factor where we're not getting our hopes up too high, only to still not like get there or achieve our goal. Right. So it's like, if we start beating ourselves up, it's allowing us to kind of protect us from that disappointment that we're inevitably going to face when we don't reach the goal. But then the thing that's ironic is the research shows higher levels of self-compassion are actually linked with us sticking to our goals and sustainability in sport because we're more adaptable and flexible. So we're more likely to actually reach those goals when we're nicer to ourselves. So,
Turns out
mhm.
being nicer to yourself, not a bad thing.
Right? Yeah. So I think so, like the signs, to get back to your question, what are the signs that you might want to work on it is really just taking inventory and being like, okay, are my current habits and thoughts and feelings working for me and helping me reach the goals that I want to reach? Like how we call it workability, right? So are these thoughts serving me? Are they helping me show up as the athlete I want to be? And if the answer is no, then it's a sign that it could be a good opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So same thing is like, are my actions helping? Are they working for me? Like, bedtime procrastination, like coping strategies. Are they healthy? Are they helping me be the athlete I want to be? Nope. Okay, cool. Let's like sports psych is great for that.
Love it. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything else about mental toughness that you want to touch on before I kick it over into goals a little bit here?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, think of mental toughness as resilience. It's being able to kind of roll with the punches.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the brute force approach. It's being flexible when adversity hits, because as athletes, we know adversity is going to hit. So that's the TLDR, is
I
how
love it.
adaptable and resilient can you be?
Yeah, it really reminds me of like the improv yes and where it's like
Yes.
you catch the thought,
Yep.
okay, yes, and okay, what's
Mm-hmm.
next?
Yep, exactly. That's a really good approach. Yep. Mm-hmm. Can't change the circumstances. This just happened. What's next?
And what?
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Um, okay, so where I want to go with goals first is looking backwards. So, when you're talking to clients, talking to athletes, how do you think about the kind of mental like past year season overview? What are some of the questions you're asking athletes or asking athletes to ask themselves?
Yeah. I really like there's a start, stop, continue
Ooh, I love
strategy.
that one. Yes.
I think it comes from like organizational consulting or, business management. And it's like, what are the things that I want to start that I haven't been doing? Like mindfulness meditation is a great example, or maybe journaling or mobility, right? Or active recovery, or actually taking a rest day, right? So what do I want to start? What do I want to stop? What are the things that are not serving me? Right. So it might be I want to stop drinking alcohol, or smoking, or like I want to stop getting 6 hours of sleep, right? What are those types of things where you're like, this is not helping me? And then what are the things that you're doing that you want to stick with? So maybe it's being really consistent with your workouts, or being, really dialed with strength training. So the start, stop, continue is always a really fun one. I also like the WWW, WWI. So that's what went well this past year. So was it, the race calendar? Was it training? Was it coach? Was it strength training, fueling, nutrition? What was it that went well? And then what's worth improving? So what are
Ooh.
the things that you want to work on for the next year? And that usually works pretty well. But if athletes have set their goals each year, I like to kind of have them go back to them and reflect on them and being like, was that an appropriate goal? Why or why not? What got in the way? Life, usually. And so like, because we don't plan for life to get in the way of our goals. So that can also be a really helpful approach.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had actually kind of made a note to myself or in my brain as I was doing strength to actually ask you to kind of speak on that because, again, coming back to this, a lot of us are in that, we're not pro. We're working multiple jobs.
Yep.
Some of us have kids, some of us have really clingy dachshunds, some of us
Yep.
are, dealing with like our parents are getting older, and there's like a lot of things that go with that. How do you help athletes like right now? I'll say very on a very like personal note, like level, like my mom is going through some health stuff. So I'm actually kind of struggling to even set goals for next year because part
Mm-hmm.
of me isn't really sure what next year is going to look like
Yep.
because
Mm-hmm.
of like our parents' health over the year.
Yep.
So how do you talk to athletes about that when there's kind of these uncertain, but not really obviously uncertain
Yeah.
things?
I think when that happens, especially for parents, family members, really significant life changes, I really encourage athletes to focus more on the process goals and kind of the daily grind. So, how do you want to show up for yourself in a way that is going to feel good and authentic, right? So, I was just talking with one of my athletes yesterday, and we were talking about, like, okay, if you want to set yourself up for success for 2027, what is 2026 going to look like? because she's coming back from some pretty significant health concerns. And so it was really being like, how can we set scaffolding that's going to be sustainable rather than playing the short game and registering for all these races, right? So I always say, like, slow your roll. Life isn't going anywhere. Like, you're here. When you look back, how do you want to show up, for your mom and your relationships with family members? Like, what does balance look like? And then actually kind of starting to map that out, right? A lot of us really like to register for a bunch of races.
Yep.
And I say, actually, like, map them out on the calendar and then look at it and ask yourself if it's reasonable, because often it's not. And we all have a different sweet spot, right? Some of us can travel regularly, and others, again, it depends on family, work. I know I have some athletes who are on the road for 6 weeks a year, living the van life, loving it. And then others where they're like, yeah, I can do one big race and kind of racecation each year, and that's good.
Yeah.
So it's really knowing, and again, taking inventory of being like, well, last season was a little aggressive. So okay, if life is going to really ramp up and you're going to have to direct more energy toward family, for example, then we're not going to register for the same number of races or even the same types of events if there's going to be a lot of training volume. So that's the other thing, is like, what are the goal races that you're kind of eyeing? And then what is your training going to look like if you actually train properly? And do you have the capacity for that? Right. Including like weekends and long training days, because we can say, oh, I can knock out a 20 miler and then I'll do chores afterwards. No, we're trashed after that. Like, we're like, on the couch, physically and mentally exhausted after those big training days.
Yeah.
So you've got to be realistic.
Yeah, I love that. We always
I often say, think about the process goals.
I love that. Yeah. We always say, can you prepare for the goal you've set? And do you want to?
Right.
Because so often, people don't actually want to do they don't want to spend the whole weekend doing like long rides and stuff.
Yeah.
And this time of year, we're also telling people, especially like those of us in the northern climates, there's less time before those like early spring races than you think.
Yeah.
Like you probably only have like 3 long outdoor rides between now and May that are like reasonable and rational. So
yeah. And the other thing too, to think about is, like, when we think about mastery and this idea of mastering our respective sports, there are so many ways to be a really great athlete. Think about like the consummate athlete. Like, what does that mean? And you can be great at leaning into skills and like strength training and nutrition and hydration and being well-rounded and having a really strong base. Like, during the pandemic, I did a lot of sessions on the rollers, and my bike handling was incredibly different before and after.
Yep.
Like, I learned so much about bike handling, about body positioning. My confidence on the bike grew exponentially. So it's like, if you can't make room for big races and travel because there are so many unknowns in life, what else can you lean into and master where you're going to see progress? And there are a lot of options there. So get creative with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Which is perfect, because the other thing I wanted to ask you about is like, what are your thoughts on some good mental performance goals that people could set?
Yes. I love, there are so many goals. Mindfulness meditation, of course. Even if it's once a week, just like 10 minutes. The more
now, are we talking like we're using an app? Are we talking we're just sitting in silence? What's your recommendation?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do it. So when you think about what mindfulness meditation actually it's like, paying attention intentionally in the moment to your thoughts and feelings, non-judgmentally, right? So it's really just being aware of what you're doing or what you're thinking or how you're feeling. So you can do, apps are great for people who like apps and they want the structure. I prefer apps because I like the structure. But you can also, and I've done this with some of my athletes, like a mental training plan. So if an athlete is ramping up, let's say they have a 16 to 20 week kind of training plan before a marathon, then during their long run each week, I'll give them a mental task. So it might be counting colors. So it could be something like, okay, from miles 10 to 17, I want you to find 5 things that are red and then 5 things that are orange,
Ooh.
5 yellow, 5 green, right? And you can't go to the next color until you find 5 of the one before that. And that forces the athletes to get out of their head and how they're feeling and pay more attention to the environment around them. So that's mental training, and that can help with mental toughness. Another example would be mottos, right? So when the pain cave hits and you get really overwhelming fatigue, what are you going to say to yourself? So the mental skill for that day might be, when the pain and fatigue hits, I want you to, nail that pace for 1 more mile and then use your mantra. This is how it feels, right? Or strong and steady, or patience, or knee lift, whatever it might be. You can also do gratitude. What are 3 things that I'm grateful for? Even if you want to be a smartass, I'm grateful for the pain in my legs and the ability for my legs to hate me right now.
Yep.
Cool. I'll give them tasks on how to deal with difficult thoughts when they show up. So when the thought shows up, I can't do this, this sucks, then you're going to apply one of the skills I've taught you. I'm noticing I'm having the thought that this sucks. So it's trying little things like that. And that can be really helpful for athletes who want to work on their mental game, is basically put together a mini mental training plan. And that's something with a sports psych provider can help with. I've done that with some of my athletes, where we'll create a calendar and I'll plug in their races. And then I'll give them tasks each day in the calendar as if it were a training plan. It's super cool.
My type A brain is
right?
Just in love with that concept. Yeah.
For athletes who want to do it on their own, honestly, just do an inventory, like a once a week reflection. That's another really great goal, is just checking in with yourself every Sunday or every Friday. Like, how did I do this week with consistency, strength training, nutrition, hydration, mindfulness, whatever the priorities are based off of what you want to get better at? Just do an inventory and then ask yourself what got in the way. And then how can I approach it next week? And so the reflection is helpful.
So good. So good. Okay. Before I let you go, this is coming out right as the holidays are happening. There's parties, there's stuff thrown off your schedule. There's a lot of snacks. Again, we've got type A athletes. We are type A athletes.
Yep.
How do you help people navigate this really kind of wacky month of the year? What are some of your best practices?
Yeah. If you have a coach, work with them. Communicate with them really clearly about what days you're going to have for travel. One thing I've been doing with mine is super helpful. I just put it in training peaks every single day, how much time I have to train. 1 hour to train, or 30 minutes for strength training, unlimited time, right? So then, or rest day, like on Mondays, I tend to say long ass work day, and then I put in rest day. So communication with coach is key. If you don't have a coach, you've got to give yourself grace and flexibility, because the social stuff and family stuff tends to ramp up during the holidays, and that consistency gets really tough. So I'm all about the athletes in like the good enough version. They don't like that, but that's, again, the consistency is what's most important. So, okay, if you can't get a 6-mile run in as a sign, can you do 4? So it's asking yourself, like, what is the next best thing that I can do?
Love it. Love it. Okay. Any last thoughts on goals, toughness, holidays, any of that before I ask you where you can find, all of your things?
I think the final thing is really just asking yourself why. As you're working on certain goals, like, why are they important to you? Because we also know that if we set goals because we think that we want to do them, but we don't really take a kind of inner inventory, it's harder to stick with them, especially that like February slog for a lot of us in northern climates where we're just over it. If you set goals that are personally meaningful, that intrinsic or that internal motivation is going to be way better when the going gets tough, because they're personally meaningful. So try to make sure that you've got goals that like fit with your value system or your moral compass, or the things that really fill your bucket.
So good. Okay. Where can people find you, follow you, listen to you, work with you, all of the places, all of the things?
Yeah. So I'm the owner and founder of Scotty Sports Psychology. So it's SKADI, sport is singular. And so if you search on Instagram, Scotty Sports Psychology, you'll find us. We post regularly. A lot of helpful content about sports psych. We try to be as realistic and authentic as possible. No David Goggins.
No David Goggins. Everyone should follow Scotty. It's so good.
Yeah, Scotty. It's fun. And then our website, you can just search Scotty Sports Psychology. You'll find it. It's scottysportspsychology.com. We provide mental performance coaching globally. So that's things like all the things we talked about today: motivation, mental toughness, setting goals, focus, mindfulness, stress management, setting boundaries. I could go on. And then we can provide mental health therapy for folks in Minnesota. So I have 3 other providers on my team. All of them are incredible. We work with athletes of all ages, 9 and older. So we have some littles now. And then we will be coming out with just more stuff in the new year. So, I mean, I think that's going to be the easiest. We've got an email list, so folks can sign up for that on the bottom of our website to stay tuned for those updates.
Perfect. And you do have the Brain Power course over on Feisty Media, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I've contributed to Brain Power. I've also contributed to some of the modules for Strong, their weightlifting course, strength training, and their nutrition course. I can't remember what it Fueled. Maybe?
Fueled, yeah.
Yeah. We unpack a little bit of like intuitive eating and diet culture with that course. So I do kind of the intro modules for those as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
I just put all of them in the Consummate Athlete gift guide for this year because it was like such just so good. And yeah, if you have time over the holidays, it's like those are all so worth your time. They're fantastic.
The Brain Power course I learned so much. Holy cow. All of the women, the subject matter experts that they recruited for that were incredible. So anyone who's interested in more like brain health, highly recommend that course. It's nerdy in the best of ways.
100%. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Erin. As always, this is so much fun, and it's always great chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.